listening to Kingston Community Radio on WGHQ Kingston. On your radio at 920 AM and 92.5 FM, and also online at mykcr.org.
Hi, I'm Kelsey Grammer. Wounded Warrior Project supports injured veterans by connecting them with fellow warriors, by serving them through mental health and wellness programs, and by empowering them to live on their own terms. No one should face a battle alone. Join us at woundedwarriorproject.org.
To battle is to fight, to struggle, to overcome, and ultimately for the Marine Corps, it means to win. There is no alternative. It's not just a statement of intent. It's a promise to our nation. A promise kept for more than 2 centuries. A promise of the Marines.
Long ago, you wouldn't think of galloping on a horse while doing calligraphy, and you wouldn't have attempted to ride your bike while typing a letter. Yet you think you can safely operate a multi-ton vehicle while texting? Behind the wheel is no place to multitask. If you want to BRB, drive now and text later. Lives depend on it.
Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org, a message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, Noise, and the Ad Council.
Hi, this is Jared Mans from the Spring Lake Fire Department, and I support Kingston Community Radio, and so should you.
This portion of Kingston Community Radio is brought to you by Ulster Savings Bank. Visit their newest branch, conveniently located at the Ulster Commons Plaza in Lake Katrine. Experience the difference that local community banking offers with the convenience of another great location, easy access, plenty of parking, and a 24-hour ATM. Ulster Savings Bank, invested in community, invested in you. Member FDIC.
Thank you, Lawrence, and good morning, listeners and viewers. You're tuned in to the Wednesday morning edition of the Kingston Community Radio Show, broadcasting live from our studios here, 16 Lucas Avenue, Kingston, New York. And we would love to hear from you. 331-9255 is our call-in number. And again, anything that's on your mind, any questions, if we can help you out, give us a call, 331-9255. We're expecting, I'm expecting Fred Costello, supervisor from the town of Sorgady, shortly. We got a nice lineup of guests this morning. And we got a caller?
It's Bill McKenna.
Oh, okay. Good morning.
I didn't recognize his voice. He sounded like someone else, and I was like, good morning, Bill.
I was disguising my voice to surprise you.
I was like, who is this guy?
That's what you were doing, huh? Good morning, Supervisor Bill McKenna, Supervisor, Town of Woodstock. How are you, sir?
How are you, Greg? Long time no see. It's been a while.
Yes, it has been. Although you did make it to the studio here, what was it, about 4 or 6 weeks ago?
Yeah, I think that was the last time I was down, yes.
And we're hoping to see you in the not-too-distant future again. Well, thank you for joining us.
I enjoyed that. Last show we did was a great one.
Yes, it was. It was.
So, how are things in Sorgady's?
Things are very well. Crazy, hectic, but good stuff. Good stuff.
You know, I mean, I think that's part of the reason I don't get down as much. It just seems like life got so crazy and so hectic and busy that there's not even time to sit down and think.
You know, you're 100% right. And, you know, I think of every day I think about that stuff. And, you know, I find there's days that my day doesn't end until 7:30 because I just hate, I'm not a procrastinator. You know, I always say, even to my team, why put off? If you can get it done and get it out of the way, do it. And I find myself a lot of times going into the early evening, and then, you know, you don't have it as you come into a new day, because it seems every day as the day progresses, your day just builds and builds and builds and builds.
You're going to get 4 more things, and if you don't stay on top of it...
I wish it was just 4. Good morning, Fred Costello, Supervisor, Town of Sorgady's.
Good morning, listeners.
We got Bill McKenna joining us here virtually.
Good morning, Bill.
Fred, how are you doing?
Glad to hear from you. How you doing?
Good, good, good.
Good.
So you must be in the same boat I'm in, up to your neck with budget right now?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. We are buried right in that and trying to get close. It's funny, we worked on so many budgets, but everyone has its own rhythm.
How many budgets do you have to deal with?
Well, we have 5 fire districts, but we don't really do much with those. Those we leave to the commissioners.
Right.
And whatever they submit, that's basically what we pass through. We have an ambulance district.
Mm-hmm.
We have, I think there's 5 or 6 lighting districts.
Wow.
And those are basically pass-throughs too, because the Public Service Commission establishes the tariffs, which translates to the rates that we basically just pass through. And then our town fund is divided into 2 because village residents pay a different rate than the town rate because where there's duplications of services, they don't participate. So the village has its own building department, so village residents' rate doesn't reflect the cost of the building department.
So there is some modification there.
Yes.
So a village resident would still pay town tax. There'd be a percentage break for those duplications.
Exactly. Yeah. So there's
another example of that is the
some of our parks.
eight satellite parks that we've got. I'm throwing now Bristol Beach into the mix. The 8 satellite parks, village residents do not pay anything for. It's the B fund.
Right.
The Cantine Complex, because it's utilized by village residents, and actually a portion of the complex is village-owned land. They do pay taxes for the complex.
And you don't have a sewer district to deal with, do you?
Yeah.
Yes. You do too. Okay.
Yep. We have. They're administered basically the same.
Right.
But we have 5, I think.
Is it 5?
Yeah. Yeah, we have those too. And those are challenging. One of the anomalies that happened as a result of the pandemic is there's a high percentage of homeowners who don't pay their water bill when it comes.
Right.
They allow it to be reassessed onto their property taxes, which is a questionable practice, but it works.
Right.
And I don't think we're going to be allowed to re-levy this year. So that's going to translate into a deferred charge for those homeowners that do that, and but it's going to impact our revenues to the tune of $200,000 over the 2 years that we're not allowed to do it.
Right.
So that's going to be an interesting. We'll probably be loaning ourselves money to get through, and then my fear is for homeowners who are unaware, 2 years from now, when they get that re-levy bill, it's going to have the accumulated costs of 2 years of water and sewer charges.
Right. Is the re-levy because of something you passed?
No, there was a state order during the
I saw what you were talking about.
Yeah, during the pandemic that restricted utilities, which water and sewers basically fall into, from being able to do specific things. And one of the things was we are not allowed to re-levy those charges this year. Hopefully that's something that gets addressed, because I think that's for the homeowners who do that and don't pick up on that the bill is accumulating, they're going to get a pretty substantial charge down the road, and it will create a shortfall in revenue that's artificial. It's just that we haven't collected the money yet, but it's, either way, it's going to be.
But you cover with fund balance or something and pay it back at the end of the year.
Yeah. Yep.
Now, for those residents that opt to do that, and basically they're going 2 years without paying that, is there any kind of a service charge or an interest charge?
Well, yeah, it will accumulate. It will accumulate. There were some restrictions about what it could accumulate, but once those re-levies happen, it goes to the county.
Right.
So it'll accumulate the penalties that are due for.
I gotcha. Okay. Right. I never realized that. Obviously, when you say $200,000 or $300,000, there's quite a few residents.
There's a fairly high. A lot of folks who have an escrow account with their mortgage company pay that bill through the escrow. And the way they do that is they pay their escrow account on a monthly basis, don't pay their water or sewer bill, and then it becomes part of the re-levy and it gets calculated into their escrow account.
Right.
Along with the penalty charges.
Yeah, they pay a little bit more than the average folks, but I don't know if they do it consciously or unconsciously. I've talked to people who didn't realize it, and I've talked to people who do it intentionally.
Right.
Even though they pay a little more, it's easier for them to manage their budget.
They're just dealing with one check a
Yep.
month instead of paying multiple bills.
Yeah. One of the things we instituted a few years back was quarterly billing, because we used to do a 6-month cycle, and over 6 months those charges would accumulate and it was a noticeable bill. And we
Right.
thought by making that bill smaller and doing it quarterly, we have a
Little-
billing system that can handle that.
A
It
little
would
bit
help.
more manageable.
Yeah, make people budget a little bit differently. And it captures, one of the unfortunate things is leaky toilets are crazy expensive.
Oh, yeah, sure.
You develop a water and a sewer charge that's artificially high by the hundreds. And over 6 months, it could be in the thousands. So
Yeah, easily.
Easily.
So do you have leak detection? Any kind of leak detection?
Yeah, we do. We have, I don't know how good at implementing we are, but we even have software now that can flag if a homeowner is experiencing an out of cycle increase, if that makes sense. But
yeah, we have something similar here that I mean, I guess it's hard to really know for sure, but it seems to work pretty well.
Yeah,
I think part of it too is it'll read the time, and if you're using a lot of water in the middle of the night when most people are sleeping, that's a flag.
That's a flag, yeah. So we do try to implement that. It's running a water and sewer district it's an interesting exercise.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
I'm glad I only have one of each. Plus, we have back in the 80s, they did some cockamamie scheme where they have what we call the on-site sewer district. And those are basically, I think we have 177 properties in the on-site district. And they're scattered all throughout town. And it's where the town went in and built private septic systems. And it's a nightmare.
So those are specific systems? They're more than just a drain field?
It's everything from the tank out. It could be tanks, pump chambers, the system itself, and these are they're not typically just your standard system with a tank and a distribution box and the bed. They're usually in difficult wet spots where we might have to pump up so that there's one or two pump chambers involved, and they're a nightmare for the system. We'd love to get rid of them.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, most of the on-site district owners would love to give up paying the yearly tax on it, but they're the ones that would have to push to dissolve it with a petition.
There must have been a problem, though, with failing systems that were polluting a public body of water or threatening neighbors.
I don't know that it was threatening a public body of water, but it was certainly, beneficial for the neighborhoods to get these systems.
Yeah.
And, I don't remember I don't remember. I wasn't even around. It was the late 70s, early 80s when they were using EPA federal funds to do this. Mm-hmm. So they, somehow they justified it.
Yeah, curious what the thought was not to develop a centralized collection system and treat the water in one location.
I think just because they were scattered far and near.
Okay.
I mean, so KTD Monastery up on top of the mountain is one of the systems. Mm. And then down the hill below them on Glasgow Turnpike, we have the Bird Cliff Guilds, which has about 11 of the systems. And then the bulk of them are probably over in the Xena area, but again, they're scattered far and wide.
Yeah.
And to have done a central collection system would not have been feasible.
Yeah, that wouldn't have been practical. Right. So I understand it a little better now. Interesting. Yeah, we don't have any of those, thankfully.
But how many you've got 5 or 6 water systems and sewer systems?
Yeah, and they're
it's all one department, though, right?
It's all run under one department, but the basically the 5 different ones are a reflection of the capital costs it took to establish those districts.
Right.
So when the sewer district went in to serve Cafaldo Park, those residents within that district are the beneficial users, and they pay the capital costs. The operation and maintenance costs are handled by the existing staff, and the same holds true for Kings Highway, same holds true for Berkeley Heights, same holds true for Glasgow, same holds true for Malden.
Right.
So the specific districts are a reflection of the capital costs. They're specific to the infrastructure in those districts.
So it's the same for us. That we've got a water, a sewer, and the on-site sewer, and each one of those, the water and sewer overlap closely, but not property for property.
Mm-hmm.
And they each reflect the capital it costs to put each one of those.
So is that 2 different departments in Woodstock, or is it combined, water and sewer?
Say that again?
Is the water and sewer department one combined department, or you have a water department and a sewer department?
No, we have water. It's water sewer. We have 3 individuals, 3 employees, and they also take care of the on-site.
Okay.
But then we would do a lot of subcontracting, a lot of the pumping of, because we have an interesting sewer system. It's not the typical sewer system where everything gets flushed down the drain and down to the treatment plant. Each property actually has a septic tank, so they all have to be pumped out on a regular basis. So that we do with contractors.
So you actually collect and store it in a location, and then you bring it for a centralized place for treatment?
No, the septic tanks would just get pumped out and brought to a facility like any other, like your septic or my septic.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And what we're treating is the fluid, the water.
Okay.
Huh.
So now in Sorgeties,
it's really a big field. Is really all our treatment plant is.
so in Sorgeties,
Yep.
Cafaldo Park, where does that get discharged into?
That connects to the broader sewer system, and it goes to the Glasgow water treatment
It
facility.
does?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Through a series of pump stations, obviously.
Through a series of pump stations. Yep. Yeah. So we have, most of the, that's not even true anymore, because now Kings Highway is so flat. I think there's only 6 feet of grade over a mile, and in order to make that system work, there's a lot of force pumping, even at homes.
So Kings Highway also goes into Glasgow.
It doesn't make it to Glasgow. Kings Highway goes to the village.
Okay.
So we pay as an outside user we collect it in the town, we distribute it into the village system, and then we pay as an outside user into the village
Where's
system.
the tie into the village? Ulster Avenue?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And then it goes down
that
behind
makes sense.
Price Chopper
Okay.
and gets pumped back up into the village and down again. A lot of work to move human waste around. Yeah. A lot of work. And in order to pass decade or so, there's been a huge effort to separate water and sewer so that stormwater isn't being treated as solid.
Sewer. Right.
Yep.
Right.
So there's that's made a big improvement because it improves the water quality. And
Oh, I'm sorry, Fred. You have separated, or you're coming up with a plan to separate?
no, we've largely separated now.
Yeah. Okay.
The village made a really big effort to do that. I think there may be, I wish Murph was here, because I think there's one project that they're still contemplating left to do. But I think that would be the last one if there is any. And that helped with water quality, because during those times of high flow, the treatment plants would get overwhelmed, and our discharge into the Sopus Creek or the Hudson River would exceed what the acceptable standards would be because of the high flows. Now that we've removed those stormwater surges from that system, the water that needs to be treated is being treated better, and the only surges we get are what leaks in from manholes and through failing in the pipe. But that's a much easier problem to manage than trying to accommodate 6 inches of rain.
Yeah. We have a similar issue up here in Woodstock that we've been dealing with, not 100% effectively, but somewhat, with the septic tanks. You know, it's hard to seal up a septic tank so that rainwater, groundwater doesn't get into it.
Mm-hmm.
So in, heavy rains, we get a lot of infiltration that way, as well as people having their sump pumps tied into the drain system. But we have had some effort, and it has helped to a degree.
Yeah, we've experienced that, the folks hooking their sump pump or their gutter.
Yeah.
In an effort to help their own water management problems out on their property. But that has a negative public implication. And every so often we do some outreach, and there's a smoke test. Did you ever do one of those?
No.
So,
I'll take that back. Yes, we did do one time.
Yeah. Are you familiar with that, Greg?
Somewhat. I'm more familiar with the dye.
Okay. We did the smoke tests are a pretty benign way to do it. We pump smoke into the sewer system, and if you see it coming out the house vents, that's a powerful indicator that they're connected with illegal connection of a sump pump or a gutter or something of that nature, because it bypasses the house trap. Kind of interesting.
That is interesting.
Yeah, and then we have to go to the homeowner and explain why that's an issue, and hopefully motivate them to correct it in a polite way. But yeah, not a fun conversation with the residents you're trying to represent, but it's an important, there's a broad public interest there, and
Well, you stop and think, if everybody did that, I mean,
you would overwhelm the system,
absolutely.
and
Absolutely.
folks who live on the creek, I'm sure they would argue that it still happens, but when that plant would be overwhelmed, you would see raw sewage in the creek, and you would suffer that odor for a few days after a storm. And those occasions, I think, are largely gone. And that's a testimony to the success of the separation projects.
Yeah.
We're doing some roof replacements too, Bill.
Some what replacements?
Roof replacements, and a lot of the equipment in the water and sewer districts is original. And for the Malden district, some of those components have been there since the 80s, and they've all served us fairly well and successfully, but things change. And the disposable wipes, which are really common household products now. Oh my God. The screening systems at the Malden plant can't handle a disposable wipe. So it clogs up the...
we're having the same problem with the main pump station at the south end of the large pavilion. Yes. And it's... there are pumps that can handle it, but I know they have one at Latham Circle. And speaking with...
Mark.
No, not Mark. With the
Mike.
With the village. Who's the guy who runs their pump truck?
Yeah.
Isn't that something? I can't think of his name.
Sleep all our knees.
But they got one at the Latham pump station, but it's like $2,800.
Yeah, we just spent to upgrade the one right at the bottom of the collection system is going to be like a $90,000 project by the time we're done.
Wow.
Because it doesn't fit where the old one did, the new one. And it's called a Duperon pump, and it has a special system that can handle and crush up those disposable wipes. And, we have to retrofit, and in order for the installation to happen, we have to actually block the collection system coming into the plant for periods during the day so that the folks that are going to install it do their work.
John Ruffner. See, my brain is not completely dead.
Into you, yeah.
Not completely dead. Partially dead.
Partially.
Let me ask you something, Fred. Back in January 2004,
Yep.
when you were sitting up in Albany at the, what was the name of that hotel? It'll come to me. And you and I were learning about being councilmen. Did you ever in your wildest dreams think you'd learn so much about septic systems and sewer systems?
No. No. So that's one of the really unique adventures of having the jobs that we have is you get this broad perspective on so many things. It's really kind of
and I
neat.
enjoy it.
So you two, Bill, came on at the same time?
Fred and I, that's where we met, up in Albany.
Yeah. What's the hotel right by the airport?
The Wolf or
Oh, the
Off Wolf
oh,
Road.
on Wolf Road.
Yeah.
Off of Wolf Road. The Desmond?
Desmond. Yeah, that's it.
Yes, that's it. So,
Yeah, we were all, we get there the first day, and we're all excited because we just won a campaign, and, we're got all this wide-eyed, bushy-tail ambition, and then you start taking some of those classes,
Oh,
and you're
my
like, oh, boy,
God.
what did we get into?
what did I get myself into?
Yeah.
And I had come off a very interesting campaign where Jeremy and Steve Knight, Jeremy was the supervisor, Steve Knight was an incumbent councilman, and we all ran together as a unit, and none of us had quite the same politics, but it was really interesting because it was the cooperation and agreements and working out the differences was wonderful. And I get up there and I start to listen to hear questions. What happens if you don't get along with your supervisor? Or what happens if your board doesn't get along with you? You're the supervisor.
Yeah.
Or what happens if you don't get along with your highway superintendent? And I'm thinking, oh my God, is this what politics is really about?
Well, yeah, there's some really horrible nightmares out there.
Yeah.
And, that's it's just kind of, I don't know. I think it's really hard, but that's one of the things trying to be the leader, so to speak, what we have is to work by consensus and bring your board along and make sure that the priorities that people are working on are shared. But if you get somebody that's just going to pound the table on every issue, it's difficult.
And we've had those in Woodstock. I'm sure you've had yours in Saugerties. It does make it difficult.
It does. It really does.
And I can't, a number of times I said, okay, we don't agree, but let's figure out where we can find some common ground and get something done.
Got to try it. Yeah, you've done that well. I always it's one of the things when I observe your leadership. I applaud you. I think you've done a good job with that.
Thank you.
But it's Greg was good at that, and I remember occasions where he had hostile relationship with the board or a department, and it doesn't make things easy. It's a challenge.
No, and I'd say the same for Jeremy. I think that's why he and Greg got along. They had similarities, and there were days when it could be a challenge, and there were days when it kind of went along easily.
Mm-hmm.
So let me ask you, with your budget, Fred, do you presented your budget back at the beginning of October. Do you sit down now and have budget hearings with the various departments? And
yeah, we're having a department head meeting today. And that will certainly be a topic. The challenge around our budget this year is Diaz has experienced over the last 7 or 8 years a fairly dramatic increase in calls and a fairly dramatic decrease in the calls that they're allowed to charge for. And Saugerties has a fairly unique relationship and how we, it's interesting because every town does it a little bit different. So the way we've chosen to do it is we actually contract with Diaz to make them a 911 provider.
Right.
And they answer all the 911 calls where it's appropriate. And we pay basically half of their budget to them. So when they do a transport, they bill Medicare, Medicaid, or whatever insurance is available. But if they go because someone had fallen and they help pick them up, that basically there's no charge for that, and the town covers that cost through the contract. Well, their call volume has increased in a manner that they are having a fairly regular demand for third out calls, meaning they supply 2 cars and they're relying on the fire districts for that other call. And where transport is needed, there's proving to be a delay.
Right.
And so in order to address that, they've asked for funding that would allow them to put a third car on at least 12 hours a day.
Right.
But now, we're to bear the salary costs of maintaining that third car is a fairly substantial increase in their budget. And they also have identified, and this is something we all are feeling, wage pressures where they're starting to lose staff because their pay rate isn't compatible with what other organizations are paying.
I know. So the Woodstock Fire District covers Woodstock and covers the ambulance, and we've paid paramedics, and they're seeing the same issue. where they're ending up in their budget this year. They're increasing their not only their wages but their package as a whole, health insurance and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And we've seen it here in the town that there's great pressures for municipal workers as well.
Yep.
With your tentative budget as it stands now, are you under the tax cap?
By about $314. Which I have to say I was surprised when I ended up, because last year we did a 0% increase. We cut the budget back. We went bare bones. We said with the pandemic we wanted to give the taxpayers a little relief. And I told everybody we would go sailing past the cap this year. And when the bookkeeper and I crunched all the numbers, that's where we were at. So
let's pick up the conversation. We're at the bottom of the hour here. It's time for a break, and stay on with us, Bill, please.
I'll give you a call back in a couple of minutes.
Okay,
Thanks,
thank
Bill.
you.
You're listening to Kingston Community Radio on WGHQ Kingston. On your radio at 920 AM and 92.5 FM, and also online at mykcr.org.
Have you ever experienced a wish come true? For a child battling a critical illness, a wish come true can be a turning point. One song, one dance, one game, one adventure, one moment changes everything. Make-A-Wish needs your support to grant the wish of every eligible child. Visit wish.org now to help grant more life-changing wishes. Together, we can transform lives, one wish at a time.
Hi, I'm Steve Thomas for Habitat for Humanity Restore. Habitat Restores are nonprofit home improvement stores and donation centers that sell new and gently used furniture, building materials, and appliances to the public at a fraction of the retail cost. The Ulster County Restore at 406 Route 28 in Kingston needs your donations. Call our hotline at 845-853-7499 to schedule your free pickup. And thanks.
Everyone is talking about healthcare these days. America spends twice that of other developed countries on our healthcare system, yet our health ranks near the bottom. How can we stop spending so much and getting so little? By shifting to a system that gives more patients access to strong primary care. Primary care can help make America healthy again. To learn more about the benefits of primary care, visit www.healthisprimary.org. This message is brought to you by America's Family Physicians.
Hi, this is Winnie from the Rosendale Seniors, and I support Kingston Community Radio, and so should you.
This portion of Kingston Community Radio has been brought to you by the First Savings Bank in Ulster County that still remains local to this day. Ulster Savings Bank, a community bank that's invested in local business, invested in community, invested in you. Ulster Savings Bank, your one-stop resource for everything local. Locations throughout the Hudson Valley and online at ulstersavings.com. Member FDIC.
Thank you, Lawrence, and welcome back, viewers and listeners who are with us the first half hour. Those just joining us, welcome. 331-9255 is our call-in number. We would love to hear from you on this Wednesday morning. We have as our guest this half hour, Michael Oliveri.
Good morning.
And Fred Costello is the co-host here with me.
Good morning.
Supervisor, Town of Sorgetes. So 331-9255 is our call-in number. If you have any questions, any concerns for Michael or any of us, please give us a shout-out. So you were just saying as you came in the door, it's a busy, busy, busy time for you.
Oh, yes. Yeah, this is definitely, we're definitely getting closer to the election. And, you know, it's a lot of knocking on doors, introducing myself, telling people about my stances on a lot of things, and hopefully securing our votes. And it's definitely fun. You know, you get to walk the neighborhood, you get to talk to people, get their perspective on things, and I love that, you know, one-on-one interaction that I have with someone when I'm actually at their door and we spend some time talking about, you know, their questions, their concerns for the area and, you know, for Kingston in general. So it's been very, very fun. You know, as I told you guys right before, win or lose, this has definitely been a just phenomenal experience. You know, hopefully I do win, and then, you know, I can just continue my path of what I think is going to be best for everyone in Ward 7 and the city of Kingston.
Is the Strand part of it?
No.
Yes, okay.
Yeah. First, second, third Ave.
Yep.
Yep. But not the Strand.
You guys had a nice weekend with the Italian Festival the other day.
Yeah, I went down there
Yep.
and for the opening ceremonies, walked around a little bit. That was actually pretty fun too. You know, I stopped and got something to eat, and I sat down at a table, and you know, I had my Mike for Ward 7 shirt on, and I had my little button introducing myself and my campaign slogan, "Safer Streets, Better Kingston." And people would look at it and they're like, "All right, what's this about?" And so, you know, just sit there talking and sharing stories,
Conversation or two.
Exactly. You know, and it's nice that people are so forthcoming with information and stories. You know, when I talk about my experience with things and my background and et cetera, I always bring up the fact that I did the motivational speaking for foster kids and at-risk teenagers, and that always inevitably opens up something, because unfortunately someone always has a story to share about, you know, abuse, or, you know, someone they know that was in foster care. And, you know, it's just not even politics. It's just good to open up that dialogue and have people talk about things that, you know, sometimes are hidden or put on the back burner because people don't want to admit that, you know, we have these terrible things that happen to kids.
It was a nice crowd Sunday.
Oh, yeah.
Jen and I were down, and we actually spent longer than what we anticipated, just listening to some of the bands, and it was a good time.
Bob Sargasano was recognized.
Yeah, we didn't get down there. We didn't get down there till about, I'd say, 1:45, 2 o'clock, somewhere in that time frame. And
So you were there at the peak time.
yeah.
It was probably packed there about that.
And I know the one that was doing the brick oven pizza, they sold out.
Yes.
Because I said, I think I'm going to have a slice of pizza, and walk down there. I love the brick onion pizza, and they were sold out. But Savona's wasn't, so we hit up Savona's.
Perfect.
Yeah, Danny always prepares for big things like that. But the brick oven place, I didn't eat there, but the people at the table across from me had gigantic meatballs. I mean, they were just huge, and they I guess they bought meatball, a rice ball, and something else, and they, like, for their family, and they're like, we're not going to be able to finish all this, but they were just ginormous.
Line, when, you know, that line was, it went halfway back towards the entryway into where the booths were.
Wow.
When we were there.
Yeah. See, I was there in the beginning, you know, for the opening ceremonies and everything like that, but even at that point, the crowd was a decent size. Like, I was definitely surprised on that early how many people were there.
They definitely wrote the script on the weather. It was a perfect
Oh,
day
yeah, you
outside.
couldn't beat that at all.
It's been a really good month as far as weather goes.
Yes, and my shoes can attest to that from all the walking. All the walking that I've been doing in the neighborhood. But yeah, definitely. And one other thing that I did want to mention on air is tonight, today is 10/13, and that's a police terminology. I believe it's for officer down or officer needs assistance. So to show appreciation, we're doing a blue light day. So if anyone has, you know, porch lights or anything like that, they can, if they have the smart bulbs, they can turn them blue. If not, they can purchase a blue bulb, and it's just showing appreciation for the men and women in law enforcement. You know, it's been a rough time for them lately, so this is just something that goes around just showing appreciation. So there's a councilman in Dutchess County, I believe his name is Bepan. He was the one that started it for the Hudson Valley, and I messaged him and asked him if I could change it a little bit and have the same thing for Kingston, and he was all about it. So, yeah.
Changed it.
Well, basically, because he had Hudson Valley goes blue, and I basically, you know, I said, you know, I shared it, and I said, we're going to also do Kingston goes blue for law enforcement. So, like, keep the same vernacular and everything like that. Just
okay.
Yep.
So
Just
you're respectful and
exactly. Yeah, I gave him all the credit because it was absolutely his idea. But then, you know, I put Kingston goes blue because of Kingston. But, you know, between that and Hudson Valley, we're getting all the different agencies.
Nice.
Just to show appreciation. So if anyone is out there that does have a smart bulb or anything like that wants to turn it blue today, just to show appreciation for the men and women in law enforcement, it's appreciated.
Glad you brought that up for our listeners and viewers. I I'm sure a lot of them did not realize it.
Yeah, I mean, it's sad, and I shared an article the other day in a Concerned Citizens group. There was a gentleman joined a police force. It was his first shift, and he was ambushed and killed. His first shift on the job.
And where was that?
It was not in New York. It was, I don't exactly remember what state it was, but it was in another state. He left behind, I believe, a wife and 2 kids. But his first shift, his first day on the job, and he was murdered. So this shows,
Horrible.
Yeah. So this is just an appreciation thing, like they have a very tough job, every day when they lace up those boots, they never know what's going to happen. So it's just to show that people in Kingston and the Hudson Valley just really, truly appreciate them and the job that they're doing.
Nice. Yeah. Very nice. There's a lot of small things, but the deaths in law enforcement are fairly well known in the field, and Chief implemented a program under 100, and that was a reflection on the number of deaths, and I forgot the time frame, but it was fairly routine how many officers go down. So he did a good job with it. He kind of educated everyone, and when you leave the department, as you're going to your car and as you're driving out, there's a little sign under 100, and that's what it represents. So try to, have those folks be mindful when they're going out there to use caution and be careful and look out for one another.
It's definitely a dangerous job, and like I said, we just want to show appreciation for it. One of my biggest issues, or the number one thing that I talk about on my campaign is obviously safer streets, and working with the police and having getting safety across the board, and that is by far the number one concern when I walk the neighborhoods and I talk to people and I say, hey, give me your list of concerns. Number one is always safety.
Is Ward 7 one of the areas where the shootings were kind of happening? No,
it's not in Ward 7, but directly surrounding Ward 7. Yeah. Yep. So they're definitely concerned, and that's. I don't make any promises on my campaign. That's the one thing I tell every single person. When they tell what are you going to try to do, this, that, and the other thing. I say, listen, the only guarantee I make through this entire campaign, the only promise I'll make is I will always get back to you. When I do my motivational speaking, my very last slide is my contact information, because sometimes kids don't want to say things in front of everyone else, but they do want to reach out to me. So I promise them, and I say, listen, if you reach out to me, I will always get back to you. It may not be right away, but I will always get back to you. And that's the same thing that I've extended with my campaign. I will always get back to you, and I've just added a little caveat of, you may not like the answer I give you, but you will always know that I will return your phone call, your email, your text message, whatever it may be. You will never wonder, hey, did Mike get my message? And that's even just saying that has been a lot to help people and be like, okay, this is someone who's going to at least acknowledge my questions, concerns, fears, and then he may not give me the answer I want to hear, but he'll be able to at least address it.
I don't know why this is striking me, but there was, it was 5 or 6 years ago, I was reading an article, and the point of the article, ironically, was that we had experienced like 15 years of declining crime rates, and that was a window that we would look back upon because of that low crime rate era. And I remember finishing the article and kind of disagreeing with the author completely, because I'm like, what's going to change? There's patterns in society that have been reinforced, and there's no reason to expect that crime rates are going to go back up again. But when I was a kid, I do remember, my mom and dad ran the businesses, and they would get broken into every couple of years, and it was unfortunately just part of it. But then as things got better, it did not necessarily happen as frequently. And when I look at what's happening, not just here or in Kingston, but across the country, and the spike, especially in violent crimes, that's what makes me think of that article. That individual was onto something. They understood there was a trend that was expiring, and that we were going to hit a new age of a spike in crime. And I don't think we fully understand the drivers for it. Certainly the relationship with law enforcement has become strained over it. And I find it interesting when I speak with Chief Tinty on the air. He talks about, we've taken a traditional law enforcement approach up until recently on how to suppress and control those things, but now they're taking a more community-minded approach. And hopefully it's a successful model, and hopefully that's something that will reverse that trend and spike, because all across the country there's been a notable uptick in violence. And for us, raising our families and living in the era we did, this is appalling. It doesn't make us feel good or comfortable. It's really unfortunate. And I kind of think back when we had the mall shooting in Kingston was kind of the time when that iceberg started to tip. And since, not that moment consecutively, but since that moment, the spikes in violent crime are kind of redefining how we perceive things and the decisions we might make to put our family in a public situation.
Oh, of course. I mean, it's unfortunate that you have to think about those things
Sure
now,
do.
but as you said, the increase in crime, and I've spoken to Chief Tinty a couple times. Nothing actually sit down official, but we have to try something. We have to try something that gets the community involved, that stops the us versus them mentality, where everybody, color, race, gender, whatever you want to break the categories down to, everybody wants to feel safe in their own home, in their own community. So now that we have that baseline, what can we do to achieve that? And that's what we need to figure out. And that's working with the community and getting that community involvement and having those hard but raw conversations of, all right, let's get to the base of all this.
I think one of the things I find curious, but we've kind of had a positive experience with it up at Saugerties, especially on the complex, is the deployment of the camera system that's pending. Because especially now with the right to know your accuser part of the bail reform, it's a disincentive for folks to participate in a prosecution. Their names are going to be out there. They're going to know. They might feel intimidated in their own neighborhood. And the police response status saying we need our own data so that we can develop our own case and our own witness, and we don't have to rely upon an eyewitness saying, yes, I saw Fred doing something, and he was at that point. They go to the camera, and they can make their own narrative, and that would stand up in court, and it's not putting that neighborhood member in jeopardy.
Exactly.
And that's been our success with the cameras is just
We've been
overwhelming.
in the last couple of months, without exception, every single incident. So it's unfortunate that we've come to that stage in society. But as Fred mentioned, if somebody witnesses a crime, and now with this, and I just cannot fathom the understanding behind releasing an individual's name who could be an eyewitness. I mean, let's face it, a lot of people, even before the bail reform and even before that stipulation that the name, were hesitant to do so.
Of course.
I know a couple of residents in the Berkeley Heights area that live near J.C. Field that witnessed things. They didn't want their names mentioned.
Mhm.
I know another one several years ago lived in Malden by Bigelow Park and witnessed and did not want their name mentioned.
Yeah.
So now it's even much more amplified where that hesitancy to come forth. And over the years, we've installed quite a number of cameras, and a lot of the using entities, organizations. Last year, 5 different ones participated in purchasing an LPR, license plate reader. So all of our entrance and exits now are covered with a license plate reader.
Good.
And that has helped tremendously with identification, because that was our one thing that was lacking. We could see the vehicle, but it was difficult to identify the vehicle. And now it's, and the software with it, you just put a time frame in, and it just comes up on the screen where there could be 10, 20, 30, 50 license plates, and it gives you a description of the car. It's just amazing. And they've come down, because I remember a few years ago, they were up around $5,000. And I believe each one of the LPRs ran $2,200 or $2,400. So almost half
Yeah.
of what it was.
Well, we
Value. And there's people that still are, you get criticism.
Oh, of course, always.
But the only ones that are concerned about it or thinking, Big Brother is watching, and don't want the cameras are the ones that are not doing things on the up and up.
Mhm.
It's simple.
Yeah, obviously I work for the bus company, and when we first got cameras on the buses, a lot of the drivers were hesitant and resisted it. Oh, you're just going to spy on us, this, that, and the other thing. But almost immediately, they saw the benefits of it because we would get a complaint call. Oh, well, your driver did this or your driver did that. Okay, you know what? All our buses are equipped with cameras. We'll watch that and see what happens. And then almost immediately, maybe your driver didn't do that, or we'll get complaints and okay, let me watch the tape, and the driver did absolutely nothing wrong, and I'm like, okay, and I'll call him back. No, my driver did exactly what they were supposed to do, and we have the camera footage to prove it. And so it's even in that regard, it's had a tremendous benefit towards us because it protects you. Like, for the most part, and video doesn't lie.
Right.
Obviously things can be manipulated in the back end, but, in theory, video doesn't lie. We saw what you did when you did it, and that's it.
They sing a different tune. And we've had a couple that have just been absolutely comical, that have been over at police headquarters and completely denied, and then the officer or the detective, whoever was handling the case, would say, okay, we're going to take a ride over and we're going to look at the video footage. And boy, half the time they don't even make it over.
Oh, of course, yeah. Oh, there was video footage of me doing that? Never mind.
Of course, now we're linked in where the police department can pull up our cameras, and then we used to go through thumb drives and flash drives like crazy. But now we can dump it into a shared file that they can just go into that shared file and bring up, and that has helped tremendously. Or if a resident calls, dispatch can bring up any one of our cameras. And within the complex, including the interior of the ice arena, I believe we're right around 60 right now.
What year was it? Oh, I guess year's not important. The incident was, if you said it, people wouldn't believe it, but you had the video to prove it. The woman was making a pothole to try to fall into.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's...
Yes, right in the roadway. And she had a chisel and a hammer, and there was just a little small depression.
Mm-hmm.
And she whacked and whacked and whacked and hacked at it. And actually, one of my team members saw it and got a hold of me. Now, at the time, I didn't have the capability to bring it up on the phone, but I actually went down to the office, and I could see right through my office window. She was on Pavilion Street doing it. And it was just comical.
Yeah, so...
Another one at the ice arena that claimed that she fell on the ice. She looked more like she was used as a punching bag. And she never even made it onto the ice. And... But it's just amazing how far that went, because there was a senior detective, Jim Murphy, with the state police, who's now retired. He was there with the group that had just gotten off the ice. It was New Year's Day, and there's a family from across the river every New Year's Day. They book it. They have family members fly in from all over the country, and they just come off the ice. And even with his testimony, this thing got very, very close. We were the next step was going to go to a full-blown trial.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Side note, my wife just messaged me that officer was in Georgia.
Georgia.
Yes.
That's horrible.
Thank you, honey, for
she's
listening and
good, yeah.
and sending me a reminder on that.
Good. Thank you for being with us.
And now she's probably turning 3 shades of red because I called her out on the air.
On the air. You're going to get in trouble later.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. I mean, that's what we want people to do. When we don't have the answer,
Exactly.
somebody can provide it, whether it's your wife or a listener or a viewer. That's what we want.
Yeah.
There's an irony and a comedy to that, though, because you came to me and said the woman dug a hole in the parking lot. I'd be like, what? That's so absurd. It doesn't make any sense. But when there's the video to support it, you're like, wow, that's a really, that's an unfortunate reality.
Good memory, because that was quite a while
ago. It
ago.
always stuck with me. And
oh yeah, certain things always, regardless of. When I worked for Time Warner Cable a long time ago in the call center, I was in the escalations group. So basically, if you said, I want to talk to a supervisor, you got me. And this lady was threatening to sue us because she called 311, or the information line, so 411, I think, take 3 times to get the number to 911. And they hung up on her every time because they thought she was joking around. And then she was also going to sue us because her son had a track phone and we couldn't tell her where he was. So she thought that a track phone meant you could track the phone.
Oh, wow.
And sure enough, I look on the call history, and there was 3 calls in a row to, 411, I think it is, for number assistance. And so I said, okay, tell me verbatim what you said, because I was thinking maybe she asked for the number to the police. Can I have the local police number or something like that? And she said, I called up and said, what's the number to 911? And I'm just shaking my head, and I'm like, how okay. And then I slowly explained things, and she said, okay, I'm still going to sue. Okay. And I never heard anything above that, but I mean, we're talking 15 years ago, but just there's certain things that just always stick out in your mind of what you go through. And that was definitely one of them. Yeah.
That would be a difficult, I don't know how you select a jury for that trial.
Yeah.
So what did you end up telling her?
I just said, listen, we'd happily refund your money, for those three calls, because, you did, that was a pay for service.
Yep.
And then I tried to explain the whole track phone, like that's just the brand of company that you went through. That doesn't necessarily mean that. And,
did you tell her the number to 911?
No, I left that one alone. And then, it didn't matter. She was still going to sue us, and okay. You can't make everyone happy. So
no, you never will. You
Yeah.
never will. And if you think you're gonna, if anybody thinks they're gonna, it ain't happening.
Oh yeah, and like I said, I've experienced that just in this aspect of things, knocking on doors. I've had people, I'm not going to go into the full story, but long story short, they're basically like, get off my property. I was like, oh, okay, have a nice day, and that was, that's the end of that. But overall, people have been respectful. I'll say that. Obviously, when it comes to politics, it's a very hot, side-based topic, and as we were, just talking about earlier, but at least for the vast majority of people, even the people who said, I'm not voting for you or anything like that, they've been very respectful about it. So that's one thing that I will absolutely give this, is that, for the most part, people care to an extent. They'll tell you yes or no, but they'll do it politely. And that was good. And there's been some, I had a plan to walk a path from my house, East Chester, to one street and then over to another, and this sweet old lady answered the door, and we started talking, and we both grew up in the same place in the Bronx, even though she's 30 years older than me. Basically, an hour and a half later, I was like, okay, well, I'm done for the day because it's dark out now. But I mean, she was just the sweetest lady, and I had just such a good time talking to her. And she's like, I know you want to go. I know you want to go. And I'm like, no, I'm having a blast here, sitting talking to you, and towards the end, she's like, well, you absolutely got my vote. And she goes, I'm a loudmouth old Italian lady, and I'm going to tell everyone I know to vote for you. And I was like, okay, that's great. And, but you get the good and the bad with everything. So.
Did you chased by a dog yet?
No.
You didn't?
No, I have not been chased by a dog.
So.
I've had a couple people with dogs that, obviously you're knocking on someone's door and you're going to do what they're supposed to do. But, I've had big dogs my entire life. I've had Rotties and Pits. And so, it doesn't, that really doesn't, and she's really going to kill me. My wife has a 5-pound long-hair Chihuahua. And that's the one that you need to be afraid of. Not my dog, but the little 5-pound Chihuahua. He's the one that barks and,
Those Chihuahuas have more in common with the disposition of a cat than the dog. They love their owner, and they're super sweet, but if they want you bad, and if they don't want you, they're going to bite you.
Oh, yeah.
They're funny.
Yeah, when we lived in Stony Run, we had one of the maintenance guys come in, and, I was holding her dog, and I have a pit boxer mix, and he comes over, he's like, oh, and then I'm holding her dog, and I'm like, he's like, hey, so he sticks his finger out, and of course the dog goes to attack him. Yeah, and he's like, the pit, no problem. I'm like, oh, that's how it is. These dogs are
they're funny, man.
Territorial. Yeah.
Mike Oliveri, unfortunately, we are out of
so
time
fast.
here. Yeah, it does. It's just amazing the way the half hour. But thank you for taking time out of your busy, hectic schedule to join us, and we'll see you next month.
Yes, and then next month will be after the election, so hopefully I'll be cheery-eyed and ready to take on the world. But
good luck.
Again, real quick, Michael Oliveri, Ward 7, Kingston, New York. Mike for Ward 7 on Facebook. That's my information, and thank you guys for your time. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. You have a great day, and we'll be back in a few.
You're listening to Kingston Community Radio on WGHQ Kingston. On your radio at 920 AM and 92.5 FM, and also online at mykcr.org.
This is the story of Daniel, who was born 2 months early. His lungs weren't ready. His heart wasn't ready. His parents could only hope that one day he would leave the hospital healthy, and they would all live happily ever after. Daniel's is just one of the more than 500,000 stories of babies born prematurely last year. You can help the March of Dimes stop premature birth and bring more babies home healthy. Learn how at marchofdimes.com. Working together for stronger, healthier babies.
Introducing the YMCA. Sure, you know the Y for a swim or a game of hoops, but we're more than that. We're a cause. When you take a jump shot at the Y, someone else is getting job training. Practice yoga as a team practices her leadership skills. We give people of all ages, incomes, and backgrounds a chance to learn, grow, and thrive. So while you might think of the Y as the place for lifting weights, we're also about lifting entire communities. That's the Y. We're so much more. Visit ymca.net/more.
Question: what will you find on all over-the-counter or OTC medicine packages to help you choose the right drug and use it safely? The answer: the Drug Facts label. This label lists the medicine's active ingredients and purpose, how much to take, and warnings you should know before using it. Remember, even OTC medicines you buy without a prescription can cause side effects you don't want. So follow the information listed on the Drug Facts label. For more information, visit fda.gov/Drug Facts label. A message from the U.S. Food and Drug Administration.
Hi, this is Tony Marmo from Norman Staffing, and we've been bringing together employers and job seekers since 1980. If you're an employer and have job vacancies, let Norman Staffing help fill them with permanent or temporary workers. We screen, interview, and recommend the best candidates for your company. We make the employment process easier and faster for you. Please call Norman Staffing for your employment needs at 338-9111, 338-9111, or normanstaffing.com.
Hi, I'm Ruth Quick from Town of Ulster. I support Kingston Community Radio, and you should too.
This portion of Kingston Community Radio is brought to you by Ulster Savings Bank. Visit their newest branch, conveniently located at the Ulster Commons Plaza in Lake Katrine. Experience the difference that local community banking offers with the convenience of another great location, easy access, plenty of parking, and a 24-hour ATM. Ulster Savings Bank, invested in community, invested in you. Member FDIC.
How's everything going? Okay, we're back.
Thank you, Lawrence, and welcome back, listeners and viewers who have been with us this morning. And those just joining us, 331-9255 is our call-in number. We have our State Assemblyman, Kevin Cahill, joining us here this morning. Also in the studio is Fred Costello, supervisor from the town of Saugerties. But before Kevin gets rolling, we're going to do birthdays, and I believe we have a couple.
We have a couple. So I have one I'm happy to share. Happy birthday to Lori Carter from your old co-workers at the county and from me. Congratulations, Lori. Happy birthday.
Okay, I don't like to do birthdays because only one person wins and everybody else loses. But here we go. Happy birthday to Dottie Dunn. Love from your family and friends and especially your card-playing buddies. Have a glorious day.
And today's winner of that famous cow pie is Dottie Dunn.
All right. Glad I picked the winner.
Picked the right one. Great. Now I'm going to have to feel embarrassed when I see Lori.
Dottie Dunn, congratulations. Happy birthday. When you get the opportunity, get down to Boys Dairy Milk House, 62 O'Neill Street, right here in Kingston, New York. Pick up that famous cow pie, which is courtesy of Boys Dairy Milk House and Kingston Community Radio. And listeners, continue to send those birthdays in. We've been on a roll here the last few weeks. Let's keep it going. It's very easy. You can email to kcr921@gmail.com. You can postal mail to Kingston Community Radio, P.O. Box 4364, Kingston, New York, 12402. So once again, Dottie Dunn, congratulations. Happy birthday. Enjoy that cow pie and have an awesome day. Mr. Kale.
Gentlemen.
Assemblyman Kale.
How are you? What was going on at Saugerties this weekend? Anything special?
One or two things.
Like?
We had a race, a triathlon, which was actually really impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah. We had,
I've watched triathlons.
Yeah. I'm impressed with those folks.
They're unbelievable.
Yeah. I mean, it ended up being a really nice day.
And like an Ironman and
Yep. And they did a swim in Nusopus Creek, and then they did a run, and then they did a bike ride.
That's interesting.
It was the first one, and it was a lot of planning for traffic, but I think always some lessons learned to make it better. But they intended for it to be an annual event, and based on what happened, I don't see any reason why it shouldn't become one.
Right.
They had a couple hundred competitors.
I was going to say, how many competitors?
It was over 200.
It was over 200. Yeah. Well, for the first time, that's not bad.
It was great. Yeah.
Not bad.
I thought it was great.
What else was going on besides the triathlon?
What are you getting at? Those?
No, I'm just curious.
You're just curious?
Yeah.
Mum Festival?
Yeah.
The Mum Festival, did you anoint a Mum Queen, or is that still not part of the process?
No, it still is. There was
on Saturday.
Yeah. And there was the Mum Bowl on Saturday, and then Sunday they did the festival to celebrate that. But I got to walk out with my niece at the football game.
Yes, you did.
Which was really cool. Yeah. And the girl, Dreama, who's the Mum Queen, great young lady. And she's got a really bright future in front of us. And it was nice to share a little bit of that moment with her family. Her mom couldn't have been prouder. Yeah.
I was out of town, so I'm just catching up. So
catching up? There was so much happening. It was a really exciting weekend. Yeah.
Here in Kingston too.
There's so much happening every weekend.
This is what life was like before COVID, right?
If somebody says that there's nothing to do or they're bored, I don't know what world they're in. But and then we stopped by just for a few minutes at the Mum Bowl and then headed down to Kingston for the.
We had the Italian Festival in downtown, and we had the O Positive Festival uptown.
That's right. Yeah.
I think maybe the last part, I could be wrong about this, but the very last part of the Woodstock Film Festival might have been happening as well. So it was a very busy weekend. I haven't had a chance to talk to Joe Conquer to find out
Did you participate in the Celebration of Life for Mark Brownstein?
No, I didn't, but I had been in touch with Catherine, his wife, and told her I couldn't because I was out of town. And what a fantastic human being.
Tremendous loss.
Mark has been a friend for a long time and an incredible supporter, not just of me and in politics, but of our community in so many ways. And when I was working on a video project across the river, the first person I thought of was Mark, and he was very gracious in his advice. And the way he ran his company, it became an ESOP, an employee stock-owned company. The way he ran his life, he was sort of a bon vivant, but at the same time as serious as you could possibly be.
Brilliant in so many ways.
And we're going to miss him. We're going to miss him. I have some friends who were very, very close to him, and they're devastated over it. And he gave a lot of good advice to people. In addition to his great beneficence when it came to donating things to money and other things to our community, he was a man of great vision, and I miss him. I'm going to miss him terribly, and I'm very sorry that I was not able to attend the memorial service. I was actually in flight at the time. So
that was inappropriately so. That was also an event, so to speak, for Saugerties because he meant so much to so many people there, and to think that Marketech started in his garage and it grew into
the garage story, right?
It's amazing, and it's true. And
now, didn't he say if I had a 2-bay garage, my company would be twice as big?
Yeah.
Yeah. And Catherine, I'm sure will carry on the legacy. She also has a great sense of community spirit. She and Mark together were critically important in opening the Art Society of Kingston headquarters on 97 Broadway, and actually starting the arts movement here in Kingston. Mark has been, and Catherine have been just incredible supporters. She was a business person in Uptown Kingston, along with my good friend Gary Kvistad, when there were very few open stores up there, and they kept it alive, and they actually caused, in many respects, this revival that happened, because they proved that you could be successful and have an attractive retail space up there. It's... Listen, when somebody passes, especially somebody as large in life as Mark is, we spend a lot of time in the beginning being sorry. But ultimately what we ought to do is take some life lessons from that person and recognize what a great and wonderful life they had, and try to emulate it in as many ways as possible. So,
I think that's a good, excellent point. And you kind of see that he impressed a legacy in how he lived upon many, many, many other people, and just what he did with the company. He sold it to his employees, and those folks are carrying that legacy forward, and they're really it's right at the front of their minds as to how they got there and the responsibility they were left by selling it and buying it from Mark directly. So,
well, between the Woodstock Chimes Foundation, the Kvistad Foundation, and Mark's foundation that was run by the late Victoria Langling, I think they invented modern community giving. In many respects, the kind of folks who, we're not Dutchess County. We don't have a millionaire on every farm. Maybe we have one or two, but not a lot. But through many, many years, any organization that was interested in help could always count on Mark and the other privately owned, basically individually run foundations. And Victoria kind of wrote the book on it, and Mark gave her free rein to do so. And so, anyway, good man, and like I said, I'm going to do my best to remember some of the good things he did and try to do the same. So.
Yeah, the other fond memory I have of him was he had a kind of jolly glow about his personality, and always fun and entertaining to spend a little bit of time with. But seeing him drive around in his Amphicar,
the Amphicar, I was going to say,
legendary. Yeah, it was just kind of a snapshot of sunshine driving around. It was really special.
If he just had an Amphicar, Mark Brunstein would be a notable character.
Legend for that too.
And that's a little apostrophe in his life, So I was out of the country for a while, but I was very sorry to miss the Italian American Festival. Of course I lent my support, as I always do. I wish I could have been there, because it is a really wonderful way that the Italian American community celebrates their presence here, and very much like the Irish Festival, it is rooted in the fact that the first and second generation of immigrants really were the heart and soul of our community. Both involved in cement and bricks and slate and things like that, and they built downtown in many respects. So it was sorry I missed it. And the O Positive Festival is so great that it's returned, and it does so much good work around our community, providing health benefits to people who don't have any or have very limited health benefits, but also waking up Uptown Kingston in the fall, just making and now actually beyond Uptown Kingston. There was a little sorrow this year, I'm sure, because a very central figure involved in making O Positive successful was Tommy Keegan. Keegan's was still a venue, but without Tommy's jovial ways, it probably was a little less joyful than it would have been in other years. So, when we celebrate our losses, we should just always remember why these people matter.
Yeah, true.
So I was before I get to that, I want to remind people that if they have children, grandchildren, nieces, nephews, neighbors who participated in our summer reading program, our event takes place on Friday. Because of the Delta variant, we decided for a second year in a row to go with a Zoom presentation. But last year's was actually fun. We had a good time. And it'll be this Friday. And if anybody needs details, or if you haven't turned in your slip yet, please give our office a call at 338-9610 and talk to Lauren, and I'll give you all the details. And I think there might be a typo in the letter that you got that said that this event is last year, not this year. But most people can figure that out. So, again, give us a call at 338-9610. Folks will be there in about 45 minutes, and we can take your unreturned forms for your kids and make them part of the celebration. And we, once again, as always, we have just a raft of community supporters for this program that will make our goodie bag very special, and a lot of passes to things, a lot of trinkets from local businesses that are in there, and actually, thanks to Michael Tierney and Lauren, those are two folks in my office, we've expanded the bag to include things from like conservation agencies. So the kids knew about a moth problem in the Hudson Valley before most of us did. So
I got to applaud you. You guys make the reading program such a priority, and you celebrate it in a really special way. Your office do a great job with it. I have relations with some other assembly offices, and no disparage to them, but they don't do the commitment that you guys do with it. Congratulations.
Thanks. We invented it.
We
did. Our first program was 1993. The assembly and library reading programs came along later on and largely looked just like ours. So we've been doing this since 1993.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. We have had thousands of kids come through the ranks. I still see people. I used to say I see people in the mall, but I see them other places, not the mall. And they say, summer reading program. I said, oh, did your kids participate? And they said, no, I did.
You've been doing it for a while. Wow. That's a really nice legacy.
We have 40-year-old people who participated in the summer reading program, and we have 4-year-olds. I mean, they don't still participate. They did when they were kids. My daughters participated, and it's funny because both my grandchildren all my grandchildren, I shouldn't say both, all my grandchildren are huge readers, but I can't get them to participate in the program anymore. They don't need it. It's like, what's the big deal? Why are you celebrating reading? And that's a good place to get to. Yeah. So
it is a good place to get to.
It's unfortunate that we can't be in person because Stephanie and the whole and Margie and the whole library crew at the Kingston Library are so welcoming and make it such a great event that we look forward to it. But the idea of clustering 30, 40, 50 unvaccinated kids and filling the room to the brim with their parents and grandparents, some of whom may not have been able to be vaccinated, as we dealt with this variant, just didn't sound like something we were ready to do.
Also,
it's inside.
Yeah.
We thought about outside, but the time of year that it is, that's iffy. We've gone out with snowflakes falling from the sky this time of year. Not many times, but once in a while.
Right, he's going to be near 80.
Yeah, right. Well, see, we probably could have, and I wish we could have as good luck with the weather where, like, the Italian American Festival has a guarantee of good weather. We don't.
You knew it was going to be good. Bob has the connection to get good weather, and when he was one of the honorees, you knew they were going to have good weather for that day because it was Bob.
It always happens, right? Yeah. And congratulations to him too. That's right. That makes it a more Saugerty-centric event, even though it took place in the wrong town, right?
No, it was great either way.
So
I wouldn't say it took place in the wrong town. It's just, see, if it was in Saugerties, more than likely it would be at the complex, and I wouldn't have
had more work.
I wouldn't have had the enjoyable time that I had Sunday afternoon. And Jennifer drove, so I could engage in a few drinks.
What was it, about Perini or?
A Perini?
Peroni.
Beer. Yeah.
Did you ever have a Peroni?
No.
They're yummy.
They're good. They're good.
Yeah, it's a really nice lager.
Is it a heavy beer?
Nope.
Oh yeah, it's as light as a feather. It is amazing. It is.
I've never had one. Nope.
And it's light. It's light without being watery, which is really nice. It's got flavor, but it's a light. It's actually a beer you want to have with a meal.
Yeah,
interesting. Wow,
it's yummy.
So
I'll have to try it.
It comes. We always try to carry it because it's a little bit of a novelty. But then there's times nobody drinks it. It just sits there, and then I end up drinking it because shelves. Right, it's not the worst problem to have. But then there's other times where it's in demand, and I'll go through more than I anticipate, and I'll run out, and I feel bad. But it's a neat little novelty to have around.
Well, a few years ago, this is going back to the festivals going on. A few years ago, my office looked around for a partner to build a portable stage because I knew all these events were spending huge amounts of money for their for their main stage to rent it for a day and then have all that aggravation. So finally, I found a partner in the city of Kingston, and we've been able to. The stage is up and running, and now it's been used twice. And this weekend past, there was multiple demands for it, and it wound up actually not even in the city of Kingston. It wound up out in the town of Ulster parking lot for the O Positive finale. I think.
Oh, and I thought that stage there on the Strand for the Italian American Festival was that stage.
No, they actually, thanks to Anna Brett, they were able to arrange for another stage, and I could be wrong about that. Maybe I have it all backwards, but I know that there was multiple demands for it, and the Italian American Society had dibs on it, and then I think they arranged that they could allow the O Positive Festival to use it.
They had
instead.
access to another.
Yeah. But
The stage is impressive, though.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. It really is. I got on it, and it's like it's a real stage. And again, going back to Gary,
the table sliding under your feet.
Going back to Gary Kvistad, when he's done the drum boogies, unfortunately in Woodstock, not in Kingston, where they belong, but we'll take that up privately. No, they're great on Andy Lee Field. He has two of these stages, and I was inspired by that, and I said, these are great professional stages that make everything work perfectly. And in those cases, those are rentals. But we were able to find a few bucks together with another local civic organization to put together the extra money needed to pay the extra money that it cost. And that stage is now being put to use, and everybody's loving it. And if it works, maybe there's room for more.
Yeah, it seems like a trivial conversation for folks that might not be involved in planning an event, but I know in my experience in having to plan events, it's always a challenge. And how many times do we just have a look, the construction trailer parked, and we try to drape something over so it doesn't look that way, and you got makeshifts,
and
you got makeshift steps trying to get up there, and
these things are built to spec, and they're built safely. They're built to withstand, all the
high winds
and things like that. Although the first organization that was interested in partnering with us backed out because their insurance company said no after a stage collapsed in Kansas in the middle of what basically was a tornado. But the stage collapsed for a variety of reasons. Number one, there was a tornado, and a house would have gone down in that. And number two, there was some mistakes made in the assemblage, but this stage is incredibly safe. It's big. It provides it's the right height. It's easily transportable, and we were grateful that it could be used, and we're hoping that it gets used a lot more around the community.
I'm sure it's very, very similar to what the village of Tannersville has. A stage just almost identical to what I saw down at the the Italian American Fest, and I would say now it's probably been close to 10 years ago when there was a group that held an event at the complex. They first brought it, and I think it's West Torrington, if I got the name right. It was the highway superintendent up there. So I had quite a conversation with him, and on the revenue that produces, and I was quite surprised that the village of Tannersville actually owned a stage like that.
Well, that's interesting you talk about revenue, because one of the understandings, I won't say conditions, one of the understandings I had with the sponsor Kingston on the stage is that they would not make money on it, but instead would make it available to people in the city of Kingston at no charge, and outside the city of Kingston at cost. And that cost is not free. I mean, there are certainly some expenses involved with it, and the expenses include the transportation, and also they keep a person on site, a person or two on site during the day for insurance purposes, and of course there's the insurance issue, but that's available to you at a fraction of the cost of what you might pay for another stage. And I thought about even Hardscrabble Day, which I also missed because I was traveling in Red Hook, and the amount of money, one of the largest expenses of that festival is the stage. Sometimes it rivals the cost of the Hardscrabble Day. Is amazing. The village of
I've heard of that, but
the village of Red Hook every fall has basically a fall festival, and it takes place in the parking lot right next to parking lot which we helped the village by from KeyBank, in the parking lot right next to the Village Hall. And it is music and booths and food, and it's very compact, but it's also great. And you know, former Mayor Ed Blondell and now Mayor Karen Smythe go to great lengths to make sure that there's good music there. There's usually like what I would call like a county fair level act there. Not necessarily the same ones you would see at a county fair, because Ed usually allowed his own musical tastes, which were pure Ed Blondell, to intervene. But the festival itself takes place in the fall, basically celebrating the harvest and, you know, the hard scrabble nature of the people in the community. And it was great. And I envisioned this stage crossing the river and going over to that festival. And, of course, going up if you need it for the Garlic Festival or other things. And even going down to Rosendale for the Pickle Festival and for the street fair. You know, it's something that I think could have a lot of use, and I think the calendar could fill up very quickly. And I could see where Tannersville could make money on it. But the object here was not to make money, but to make it more possible for
Just self-sustaining.
community organizations to hold events without bankrupting themselves. So,
The Hope Rocks is the one that currently, well, they're the only one. The Triviatopia used to utilize it. In fact, I think the very first year we had it was set up right on second base on Keeley Field.
Mhm.
And thankfully, the ground was fairly dry and hard, but Hope Rocks each year rents that one.
you know,
That's an impressive piece of equipment, though.
Yeah, yeah.
The stages are big and they're heavy, but they're also versatile, and there's ways to put them on even uneven ground and not necessarily soaking wet ground, but you could put them on you know, soft surfaces, and with the right planking, you could make them secure. You know, it's big. That's the biggest issue, and I think that if we work with somebody to build another one, we're gonna go with slightly smaller version, just because it'll be more versatile to use in places. But you know, still be reasonable size, but just a slightly smaller version so that it can make sharper turns and, you know, go in.
Size is always a matter of perspective, you know, depending on the event. If you put a sizable band up there, it needs a lot of real estate to do it.
Yeah.
Arm of the Seas Productions they're very flexible. They can expand or contract depending on what's available, but some of their productions demand a lot of real estate too. And, you know, you could see the space being consumed fairly quickly. Even, I remember doing opening ceremonies for the Relay for Life's. And, you know, you have a couple of honorees up there, the host, and a couple
Gets crowded quickly.
Gets crowded
Oh,
really
well,
fast.
for the opening ceremony of the Irish Festival, the Hoolie on the Hudson, we are elbow to elbow
crowded,
on the
yeah.
stage.
That was crowded.
We are really crowded.
Yeah.
Just one more thing to wrap up in the first half hour, because I'd like to talk, if you don't mind, about the trip I took in the second half hour, because it was very important. But one more thing is my staff is right now working on putting together the schedule for our roundtables across the state of New York on COVID and insurance and the various issues related to insurance during COVID. And that ranges everything from people who didn't have health insurance to and needed hospitalization because of COVID, to people not paying their premiums, not being able to because they stopped working or their businesses were shut down, to businesses that were looking for what they call business interruption insurance, and also the impact on things like life insurance. So we're starting to plan these roundtables. We purposely waited until most of the issue had passed, most of the pandemic had passed, because we really wanted to gain some perspective, and I'm glad we did, because it will allow us to have a full range of hearings. So we know we'll have at least one in Albany and probably one in New York, but I'm also looking at a few other places in the state where there might be a particular need, and between that and getting ready for the new year, the Albany office is buzzing.
Imagine it is. So that would be the planning and the data you collect from that circuit of hearings will prepare the insurance industry for the next.
Not only that, Fred, but you know, after Superstorm Sandy, we did the same thing. We went around the state and we said what went right, what went wrong, and we for example, one of the things that I want to do and haven't been able to do yet is to empower insurance agents to become part of the emergency response team. Because while adjusters are all important, agents know their communities. And at that particular moment in time, to recruit them to go on out and reach out to the customers who are in need, those agents are more aware of who they are than anybody else. Some other things we realized from Sandy is that we need rapid payment of claims, and sometimes you can't preserve the evidence of the loss. We need to make sure of a lot of other things. So we did make a lot of laws after Sandy to make things better. But we also recognize that the industry, after Sandy, had about a 95% satisfaction rating across the board, and that insurance companies were very responsive. That 5%, although it's an exception, we wanted to identify and fix. And that's what we worked on there. We hope to do the same thing here. I think a lot of people were very, very pleased with the response of their insurance companies to COVID. Can't pay your premium this week? We'll give you a little more time. You need your claim paid? Okay, we're going to make sure we pay your claim. Your health insurance, we're going to go wide on the health insurance. But there were also issues. People thought they had coverage that they didn't have. There was a lot of confusion out there about it, and we're going to try to allay some of that confusion and create opportunities so that if we have this happen again, God forbid we do, but if we do, that we're ready.
Okay, with that, we are at the bottom of the hour. It's time for a break. We'll be back in a few.
You're listening to Kingston Community Radio on WGHQ Kingston. On your radio at 920 AM and 92.5 FM, and also online at mykcr.org.
Hi, I'm Kelsey Grammer. Wounded Warrior Project supports injured veterans by connecting them with fellow warriors, by serving them through mental health and wellness programs, and by empowering them to live on their own terms. No one should face a battle alone. Join us at woundedwarriorproject.org.
To battle is to fight, to struggle, to overcome, and ultimately for the Marine Corps, it means to win. There is no alternative. It's not just a statement of intent. It's a promise to our nation. A promise kept for more than 2 centuries. A promise of the Marines.
Long ago, you wouldn't think of galloping on a horse while doing calligraphy, and you wouldn't have attempted to ride your bike while typing a letter. Yet you think you can safely operate a multi-ton vehicle while texting? Behind the wheel is no place to multitask. If you want to BRB, drive now and text later. Lives depend on it.
Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org, a message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, Noise, and the Ad Council.
Hi, my name is Jackie Lovezzo. I'm from Lake Katrine, and I support the Kingston Community Radio because it is an invaluable resource to the community and its residents.
A powerful community bank is one that has leaders that are involved in their community. At Rondout Savings Bank, they invest in the success of our community by working side by side with local people and local businesses. When you choose to bank Rondout, you are part of a bank that is dedicated to the future of your success and the success of your community. Rondout Savings welcomes you to open an account today and discover what it means to be part of a powerful community bank, one that knows you by name. Rondout Savings Bank, always working for you and our community, with branches in Kingston, West Hurley, and Hyde Park, also online at rondoutbank.com. Equal housing lender, member FDIC.
Thank you, Lawrence, and welcome back, viewers and listeners who have been with us this morning. Those just joining us for our last half hour already.
It did go quick.
Flies by. 331-9255 is our call-in number. We'd love to hear from you. We have State Assemblyman Kevin Cahill at the head of the table, and alongside of me is Town Supervisor from Saugerties, Fred Costello.
Good morning, everyone. So you did have an interesting couple days.
I did, yeah. I was invited by an international group to join people from many, many countries in commemorating the 80th anniversary of an event called Babin Yar. And, well, if you want to take your call, I'll go into it.
Good morning. We do have a call. Good morning. You're on Kingston Community Radio.
Good morning, and thank you, Kevin, for all the community things that you do.
but I can use your advice. As you know, I'm a strong public critic of government bureaucracies, school boards, and politicians. So my concern is, so when the Justice Department sends armed FBI agents early in the morning to search my home, should I keep a light on at night and signs on my doors stating that the doors are not locked, so please don't kick them in, and please do not disturb what is not dust, but the ashes of my ancestors. You know, that's what's happened with the Attorney General for saying that we may have domestic terrorists for people who want to attend school board meetings and is sending possible FBI investigators down. This is one of the scariest things yet in our country.
Where did this happen, Paul?
And it happened in Virginia, in Loudoun County, I believe, in which a man was arrested because he was complaining about this to the school board and arguing with him, and then the guards just threw him down and arrested him. Well, later on he came on and he said it was because I'm challenging what is happening in our schools. Mm-hmm. My daughter was sexually assaulted in a girl's bathroom by some man dressed in a skirt, and that these are the kinds of things that are happening.
Well,
the main thing is that where are we now, where the head of the Justice Department is threatening to send FBI agents after people who will protest at meetings, public meetings, and therefore will be considered domestic terrorists.
Right. Well, let me tell you that if something like that is in the news, that's still a good thing. And I'll tell you why I think it's a good thing. It means that it's an exception, not the rule. This has been a couple of years where we've had a cathartic look at law enforcement generally, over whether law enforcement in the way that we've envisioned it for maybe the past 30 years is the appropriate way to go about it, and the use of force by law enforcement rather than the use of reason, and using law enforcement in circumstances where it's inappropriate, such as issues where there's mental illness involved or domestic disputes involved. That's all being reviewed. And when it comes to the issue of terrorism, we have had a brand new view of terrorism ever since things like the Oklahoma City bombing and the shootings in various schools. We've become far more sensitized to threats in advance, or what are perceived threats in advance. And it's my belief, and I don't know anything about the circumstances of the matter that you're raising, but it's my impression is that by and large, it's sort of an unknown whether law enforcement is reacting appropriately or overreacting, and sometimes it looks very clear in the rearview mirror, but the circumstances leading up to it may be very different. And we've seen evidence of it time and time again. The emergence of body cams on law enforcement officers has allowed us to give a more careful review of the circumstances, and sometimes it exonerates the officer, and sometimes it indicts the officer. And the same is true of I'm sure, those sorts of things. But we remember a young woman named Breonna Taylor who was shot dead in her sleep by law enforcement officers who broke into her home because they suspected that there was someone in there who could have been violent against them. That was determined to be an overreaction. It's every circumstance is different, but I think you make a good point in that we have to be careful not to cross the line and disrespect that First Amendment right, and not just the First Amendment right, the moral obligation to respect free speech. And even if people disagree with one another, we have to get back to that point where we can do so civilly. In terms of the FBI going into somebody's home for something, I'm also not aware of that circumstance. But I can tell you that, as you and I both know, since we both grew up in and everybody else for about 55 or 60 years grew up in the J. Edgar Hoover era of the FBI, we know that the FBI is also susceptible to abuse. And we have to keep a check on it. I have no problem, and many of the law enforcement officers that I've talked to at every level don't have any problem with making sure we have good civilian checks on our law enforcement agencies to assure that they don't cross that line. It's very important to all of us to protect freedom, and it is at risk. When people are scared, they're willing to give up a lot of freedom.
Well, I mean, we got to respect our law officers because they are under a lot of attacks now unfairly. Yes, there are a few people in every field that are bad. But here, when we have the chief law enforcement agent or person in the country coming out with that kind of order to the FBI is an outrage, and it threatens everyone. So anyone who speaks out, which is our freedom of speech, anyone who challenges authority in the schools, if they go to the Board of Education, they're not causing problems in the schools themselves. The kids are suffering from a lot of what's happening in the schools. But this is something where I think that all people who are involved in politics, but every American citizen needs to demand that man in charge of the, Justice Department should resign, because to give that kind of order and declare that people who are giving their honest and their right to speak can be arrested and called, domestic terrorists, I've never heard of that before. I've never seen it take place. And I think it's the most, one of the most dangerous things we're facing today. So I think that people need to wake up and start protesting that.
I have to tell you, I've witnessed it personally, and I've witnessed it through the lens of history. And Dr. Martin Luther King was considered a domestic terrorist because he was able to inspire crowds to start thinking differently. Malcolm X was considered a domestic terrorist because he had associations with people who had associations with people who had associations with violence. It's existed before. And by the way, the FBI not only raided their homes, the FBI planted evidence and made up stories about them. So just because we're a little paranoid doesn't mean they're not out to get us. But the fact remains that I think by and large, I would disagree with one point that you made, that everybody who's exercising their right to free speech is being subject to this. I can assure you that on a regular basis, right across from my office, groups assemble on a regular basis expressing their view. Down at our hospital, as you well know, people stand there and express their view, and they are not subject to any sort of oppression or persecution by law enforcement or anybody else in our society. So I hear what you're saying, and I think we have to be vigilant. But and I'll try to read up more about what's happening in Virginia and elsewhere in the country on this subject.
There is an unfortunate trend. I know there's a number of videos where folks who were speaking at a board meeting followed board members to their car or their home and made threatening comments. There is a boundary to our expression of free speech that's appropriate and not. And certainly exchange of ideas is at the fundamental.
There was a planned protest at the Boston Marathon, the return of the Boston Marathon. There was a planned protest against Senator Sinema from Arizona because she didn't support an economic development package, and hundreds of people were going to descend upon her as she was competing in a marathon. There is, and we heard the story many years ago about somebody who went into a restaurant and was told to leave, a member of the Trump administration. That's wrong too. But I understand law enforcement has to be vigilant to assure that when they suspect that somebody might cross the line, they prevent it from happening. There's, an ounce of prevention is a pound of cure. We don't want the next Oklahoma City. We don't want the next January 6th. We don't want the next school shooting. And whatever is done to prevent that, we have to respect it. But that's why being in law enforcement at any level is so critical. It's such a delicate balance, and it's such an awesome responsibility. So I share your concern, and I think it's something that crosses political lines.
Do we lose him?
We may have. Well, anyway, Dr. Paul, thank you for your call. If you're still listening, always good to hear from you. So you were going to tell us about your...
Yeah, I started telling you, and it's sort of apropos. Bob and Yar was an event that took place in September of 1941, the last 2 days of 1941, when the Nazis descended upon the city of Kiev and ordered all the Jewish people in the city to report to a place that they were told they were going to be gone for a very brief period of time, or different stories were told to them. They were told that they were going to be transported to Palestine, and a number of different things. But when they arrived at the Babin Yar Cemetery, which was a Jewish cemetery on the edge of town, they were literally lined up in front of a ravine and summarily shot one by one. And at the end of 2 days, 33,771 people were murdered. Let me repeat that number because it is the population of Saugerties and Woodstock put together. 33,771 people were murdered. And by the end of the Bobbin Yar massacre, 2/3 of the population of Ulster County had been murdered. 120,000 people were executed in that way. And many people, the first impression that they have of the Holocaust is the gas chambers of Auschwitz or Dachau work camps and other things like that. They forget that those things came along 3 or 4 years into the World War after we were involved in it in the United States, and certainly a good solid 10 years after the Holocaust began. So going to Kiev to celebrate to commemorate the 80th anniversary was a solemn occasion, and it was noted by the presidents of Ukraine, Israel, and Germany. All appeared at a ceremony that we were participating in what will essentially be a worldwide respected monument, probably akin to Auschwitz when all is said and done, to commemorate this tragic event. People don't realize, we hear the number 6 million and it becomes the large number. As I said to a group the other day, the first 4 letters in the words numbers are numb. Mm-hmm. And it makes us numb to think of 6 million people. But when we talk about 33,771, we think about that one. Mm-hmm. And that one person who had a family, that one person who was living their life as they thought, fairly normally until this occurred. Another tragic part of what happened at Bobbin Yar is also something I think we have to start to get our arms around when it came to the Holocaust. When the Nazis arrived in Kiev, they were anticipating that there would be 5,000 Jewish people, and they were prepared to execute 5,000 Jewish people. They were not prepared to execute 33,000 Jewish people. So the first thing they did is they went to the local police departments and they commandeered those police departments and made the police officers in the town participate in the shooting. That wasn't enough. After that, they went door to door and asked people if they had firearms. And if they had firearms, they invited them to the park. And regular citizens, people who were neighbors the day before, came and participated in this massacre. And it's so easy to cross that line. So easy to recognize that yesterday we were neighbors, tomorrow we are adversaries and possibly the assassins of one another. We came close to that last year in this country. I hope we're pulling back from that sort of polarization that exists and that we get back to the point where we recognize our common ground. But quite honestly, the lessons learned in this place need to be told over and over again, because we cannot pay homage to the mantra about the Holocaust of never forget if we don't know what we're not supposed to forget. This wasn't about just gas chambers. As tragic and horrible as they were, it involved everyday people, and it involved individuals. Every single one of those 6 million people, every single one of the 25 million people who lost their lives in World War II were individual people, and they need to be honored and respected. I was very lucky to be with a group of very well-informed and educated people from mostly New York State as we attended an Israeli reception, and then went on to Bobbin Yar and were able to visit with temples and synagogues across the city. And then I was also able to go up to Chernobyl, which anybody my age or older, and Fred kind of remembers a little bit about Chernobyl, but it was the greatest nuclear disaster that ever occurred up until probably Fukushima. And if you don't count Hiroshima and Nagasaki, which were not accidents.
Intentional, yeah.
But one thing that people don't know is that Chernobyl is one of the places where the Hasidim was formed, a very significant part of the Jewish faith, and one of the fastest growing parts of the Jewish faith. Some of the the rabbis who came from that community have populated the earth with Hasidic communities, and they started there, and that entire place is wiped out. In Chernobyl, which separate and apart from the Jewish issue, except not really separate and apart from it, is evacuated completely. 10 miles around the plant is called is the primary exclusion zone, and then the secondary exclusion zone is 30 miles around the plant. And nobody is allowed to live 10 miles around the plant, and 30 miles around the plant there's limited ability to live. Now, there are settlers who have gone in there and have flaunted authority and said, we're going to live here anyway. But by and large, this 30-mile circle is deserted. And if you think about
it was a major city. It wasn't like it was a small mountain.
Yeah,
it's a substantial
there
city.
were several dozen villages and cities that were affected by this. Two countries, Belarus and Ukraine, were both affected by it. If you put that in the context of the United States and, say, Indian Point, 30 miles around the Indian Point plant, if we told all those people, you must move, we're displacing 2-3 million people. We might even be affecting parts of New York City.
Yeah.
And certainly Connecticut. To see it firsthand, and now whatever number of years later, this is 34, 35 years later, to see it firsthand and to go up and see the abandoned playgrounds, just stopped. It was a playground one day, and the next day it wasn't a hotel.
There's
that
an
was
iconic picture of a Ferris wheel and a bumper car.
I'll show you my picture there later.
So the buildings are all standing still?
Yes. Yes, there are phone booths. There's some places where if you go through those villages, places I wasn't prepared to go, if you go through the villages, you can look on the kitchen table and there's still the cornflakes box sitting there. There are schools where the lessons are still written on the blackboards. And for several days after the Chernobyl disaster, people were told to isolate themselves in place. And then one day, they evacuated everybody, and they said, just take a few things with you, you'll be back, sort of like what happened earlier on with a very different consequence. And then those folks never went back to their homes after that.
Because they couldn't.
They couldn't, right. So I think it's, I always mispronounce it, but Pripyat was another big city around there, and that's the one that's sort of iconic. But besides Chernobyl, and visiting a few other places, it was just an amazing couple of days that I was able to spend, and I've learned so much. And my intention is not so much about Chernobyl. I've been talking about that since I was the energy chair in the assembly, but the Jewish community in Chernobyl, which is decimated. It's gone. If you're a Twersky in this country, and you can't even go back and visit the graves of your relatives anymore because the ground is still radioactive.
Oh. I'm sorry, yeah.
My intention is to work with the folks that I've been traveling with on this mission to put together a program that will inform the public. I mean, who thinks about the fact that regular citizens were recruited to participate in the Holocaust? And, you go down to the ravine and you shoot somebody in the head and you go back the next day and you're the baker and you make your bread. It's something very wrong with that. Another interesting thing that occurred.
The lessons that led to that as an acceptable practice are the lessons that we lose sight of and that we don't spend enough time understanding, because those were just regular folks like you and I doing something deplorable and we just can't relate to, thank God.
Right.
But there was a powerful political force at play that motivated people to think and do things that were outside of what any of us would constitute as normal behavior.
Not to sound like Donald Trump, but I think many of the people that attended what started out as a rally on January 6th last year were good people. They were good people, regular citizens in our community. They did a bad thing. Mm-hmm. They attempted an insurrection of this country. They tried to subvert the government. They tried to have a revolution for a purpose that was not for the greater good of the people of this country. Maybe they thought it was, and maybe the folks that were collaborating with the Nazis thought that it was the greater good. But there's a movie coming out, I think the premiere is October 17th, called Babin Yar in Context, and I would urge everyone to watch it. And very little dialogue. It's mostly file footage from the time. And the part that there were a couple of things that I found very striking. One was when the Nazis descended upon Kiev, when the caissons came rolling along, people in the street were cheering. People of the city of Kiev were cheering. because they had been suffering, and rightly so, under the oppression of the Soviets for the previous 30 years. And even Jews were not treated well under the Soviet Union either. And so people standing on the street were like, oh, finally we're going to get relief from Stalin. We're going to get relief from the terror we've been subjected to, and maybe we'll get some economic relief because that's what this war was really about to a lot of people. 2 years later, when the Russians came in and re-liberated the city, the crowds were equally as large and cheering them on. So, it's everything in context. And this video, this 2-hour movie, is just amazing to watch. And it's difficult to watch at times because you do see the mass murder of people. And you do hear from survivors who had horrific stories to tell, the way they survived. If you're in a ditch and your executor thinks you're dead, you stay still under the dead bodies until you can escape. And one man described another city up closer to Chernobyl, actually, where and this is difficult to say, where the pile breathed for several days because not everybody actually died, but they were buried under dirt. And you could see the dirt moving because people were still breathing until they suffocated. So it was a horrific death, as bad as gas chambers were, and they were horrible, and they were weapons of genocide. This is equally horrible in many other respects, and I'm sorry to say that I think so many people don't even know about it. And if we want to learn the lesson to keep from repeating this, we have to learn how it happened in the first place. And it didn't happen overnight. It didn't happen because a funny-looking guy with a little tiny mustache took over the world. It happened because regular people didn't abide, and regular people weren't as aware as they could be. So I hope that we can turn this into an important program. And the other important part of the Kiev exhibit is that we are unfortunately reaching a point in time where, just as we're losing World War II veterans, and soon there will be none, we are losing survivors at the same rate, and soon there will be none. And the Kiev exhibit is intended to help people understand the Holocaust when there are no survivors to tell the story. So there are exhibits on the grounds of the Babin Yar Memorial. One exhibit is a stainless steel floor and pillars that have been destroyed, filled with bullet holes from the same caliber weapons that were used to mass murder people 80 years earlier. Another memorial is the recreation of a rural synagogue, none of which are available to see anymore because they were all destroyed or converted. But probably the place where people will congregate the most is a wall made of coal with spots where quartz has been placed in the wall, and the wall has water coming down, so the wall cries. And the quartz is placed at the head, the heart, and the stomach to remind people of how these things actually start. They start with your head, your heart, and your stomach. And the wall is placed immediately next to a ravine where 30,000 people were lost their lives.
You were deeply moved, I could tell, as you're telling the story.
Yeah, I still am.
And, I'm reflecting back. I had opportunities when I visited Israel to see the National Holocaust Memorial there, and my professor at the time, set up interviews with Holocaust survivors. And if you have any shred of humanity, when you hear their stories, you become emotional.
Yeah.
And just watching I'm reflecting back to that moment in my life.
I was lucky that earlier that day I met the director of the Yad Vashem Holocaust Memorial Museum in Jerusalem, and we had a long discussion of all things about Yochi Voss from Woodstock. And,
wow.
And I was talking to him about her memorial and how I admitted that I vandalized a tree to get a branch from her tree that has been planted in her memory, but I promised I did it in a very careful way. And I was a little nervous when I went back to Yad Vashem a couple of years later to steal another branch to find the tree was gone, and I thought, oh, did I kill it?
But That's a good deed going bad if you
But
kill
the
it.
reality is that they were replanting it. They were putting a memorial bench in, as they're doing all through the avenues of righteous people. They're putting a bench right where Yochi and Art were recognized. So it was a great experience, and I think one that has renewed my commitment to making sure that we don't forget, and we do everything we can to keep from repeating it.
Wow.
So, summer reading
Sharing.
program this Friday.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. That was really something.
That was.
Yeah.
That was. And we are just about out of time here on this Wednesday morning. State Assemblyman Kevin Cahill, thank you for taking time out of your busy day, as always. And thanks for breakfast, as always.
You got it.
Thank you, Fred Costello, Supervisor, Town of Saugerties. Thank you, Lawrence Maxwell. And most importantly, thank you, listeners. We'll be back here next Wednesday, same place, same time.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.